DMI, South Lakes.
Okay, so there's still a few people joining, but I think we'll kick off the evening. Once again, thank you so much, everybody, for signing up and joining into our little webinar. It's strange having usually we have them in the winter, but it's nice having them on a sunny evening. So thank you for giving up the sunshine to come and hear some wonderful people talking. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. We're all used to these webinars now, but if you should happen to lose your connection for whatever reason, just give it a few seconds, and if it doesn't work, can I just suggest you log out and log back in again? The meeting is being recorded, so if your connection should drop for whatever reason, don't worry, you're not missing anything. It'll all be available online later. And as I've already said, and for anyone else who's just joined, we have got the chat room and the Q&A going. So throughout the evening, please do drop questions in there, and Helen will monitor them throughout the evening and bring them into the conversation as necessary. Okay, so just a quick round the screens introducing us all. Although I'm sure I'm known to many people, we always have new people on these webinars, but I'm Adrian. I help Ian in the background organizing the event. We've also got John and Helen, who do a lot of work in the background helping with the volunteers. And John is our tech guy who makes sure this thing works seamlessly throughout the evening. Ian, just supping his tea, as we know, is our wonderful race director, who's just in the background to make sure the race runs smoothly. And we have two guests tonight. Stuart Johnson. Hi, Stuart. Who, as we all know, had a great run to win last year's race. And we also have a West Highland Way legend that is Lucy Cahoon, down in sunny Peebles, I think. And Lucy and Stuart are going to share some thoughts with us throughout the evening. And we're going to chat to Stuart in a minute, and then we'll have a little break where Ian will just get a few housekeeping notes on the race in general and do's and don'ts that you should be paying attention to, emails you should be looking at, etc. And then we'll catch up in the chat box, and then we will chat to Lucy about her wonderful shoe share scheme, as well as her memories for a record-breaking run and her advice for training for this year's event in the month that you have left. Okay, so without further ado, we'll kick off and we're going to chat to Stuart first of all. Stuart, how are you?
Hi, not too bad, thanks.
So just tell everyone where you're tuning in from tonight.
So Glasgow, based in Glasgow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. And I believe last year was your first attempt at the West Highland Way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, last year, first time.
And I think it's fair to say it went fairly well.
Yes, happy with it. Yeah, it's a good day out.
So just to start things off, just talk us through your race. You're there in the station car park in Mulgai, 10 minutes to go. What's going through your head?
I think just trying to stay calm, not get too excited, not let the nerves get the better of me, making sure that everything I needed to have in my pack was there. I'd been to the toilet and yeah, I was kind of ready to go. That was the main things going through my head. And yeah, just try not to get too excited and start running too fast and get caught up in all of that. So I think that was the start for me.
It's all good basic advice. And your race went, I'm assuming pretty much to plan. There were a group of you together at the start, but you halfway up the lock, and certainly by being glassed, you were in the lead. Were you ever worried after that someone might catch you, or were you just running your own race after that? It's a long time to be in the lead. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my approach to these things is always to try and run my own race and not get too worried about who's behind me and what splits they're running and all these sorts of things. Because I think you just end up wasting energy and getting caught up in someone else's game who maybe burning matches too early. Or you don't really know how they're feeling. So yeah, I mean, I think I was kind of surprised to be in that position kind of relatively early on, and it was definitely a lot of pressure, but managed to hold it together. So
I think that's good advice for anyone, wherever they are in the field, that it's just run your own race basically, and don't worry too much about splits and other things. Yeah, it's great advice for everybody. So when did it actually dawn on you that you could actually win the race?
Uh, just just coming out of Tyndrum, I think that was the first time that I'd let that thought creep in. And that's maybe when my motivation started to change towards trying to hang on for the win rather than trying to just have, like, my own good race to kind of get that wee additional kind of accolade, I guess. Um, but it really wasn't until after Lundavra when I'd kind of found out that I had a decent buffer, or I was fairly confident that I had a decent buffer, and minus a catastrophic injury or something like that, I would have been able to hang on.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people on the call tonight, it'll be their first West Highland Way next year, as it was your first one last year. You've talked about realizing just beyond Tyndrum that you thought you had a chance of winning it. I'd say that advice can go right down throughout the field till you get to a point in the race, especially the first time, is where they actually realize, hey, I can finish this thing. Because it's always been a doubt up until then, but you just get that point in the race where the confidence grows and you think, hey, this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And although we can't all win the race, especially for the first time people on the call, getting to Fort William is the main goal for most people. Can you just paint a picture what you were feeling when you came up that last sharp climb after Lundavra and you just see Ben Nevis right ahead of you and you just realize you've now got 5K downhill to the finish?
Yeah, well,
Just
that's
paint that image in people's minds of what that actually feels like. We've all been through it, but just paint it, your own image of it. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I think that's one of the great things about the West Highland Way race is the further you go north in the course, like the more beautiful it becomes and the more rewarding the landscape seems to be. So as long as you're not kicking too many rocks, you can lift your head up and enjoy the surroundings. And it's definitely really nice when you get through Glen Nevis. It's really rewarding and I guess extra special because that's the kind of highest point in the UK. But it's definitely a bit intimidating knowing that you've got that 5K downhill to finish when your legs are absolutely shredded. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So here we are now. We're just under a month before this year's West Highland Way race. For most people, all the hard work has been done now, maybe 1 or 2 weeks of hard training before taper time. This time last year, what was your training looking like for the final month? Yeah.
I think by this stage, like most of the heavy training had been done and kind of starting to taper down training now. And it was really more switch and focus towards making sure that all the preparations for the logistics of the race and organising what was going to happen at checkpoints and trying to work on more of the sports psychology side of things, so like visualizing each section of the race, and think or trying to anticipate how I might be feeling at that point in the race and what problems I might have to navigate at that point in the race and how I was going to do that. So that was really a kind of turning point around now was that when the training volume and intensity was coming down, it was more switching gears towards the mental prep or more extensive mental prep and making sure that all the organisation for the race was in place a few weeks ahead. The only training thing that got added in at this point was doing some heat adaptation in the sauna. So I was doing a lot more of that, because just like we've had just now, like a kind of warmer spell, and that's what everybody was getting very nervous about, was how hot it was going to be on race day. So just wanted to make sure that I had that box ticked.
So you've talked a little bit about mental preparation there, and a lot of people are doing the race for the first time this year, and a lot of people are doing their first race maybe beyond 50 miles of 100K. I mean, no one goes out and trains 100 miles in one go for this. Well, you wouldn't recommend it. I'm sure it might be the odd person who does, but for you get physically fit, but there's that little bit of a leap into the unknown for most people doing their first 100-miler. And it's often said it's not just being physically fit, but as you've alluded to, it's what's between the ears, if you like, to get you through an ultra. how do you mentally prepare for that side of things, just to sort of get your head in gear for doing something more or less jumping off a cliff and saying, I'm going to run about 30 or 40 miles than I've ever run before?
Yeah. I think for me, it's been built. Oh,
You're good.
for me, I think it's been built up through a bit of experience. Like I kind of raced 50 Ks, 50 milers, 100 Ks, and then like a kind of 72 miler. I think was the biggest distance I'd done before the West Highland Way. So through those experiences, kind of learned how I was feeling in the later stages of a race and what was working for me, so I could just try to extend that. But ultimately, I was going into the unknown once I get past Glencoe. That was like every step after Glencoe was the furthest I'd ran. Um, just accepting that it was going to be hard and there was going to be highs and lows, and trying to remind myself that if I was going through a low patch, that I would, eventually start to feel a wee bit better. And beforehand, trying to think about, if I was having like an energy slump, or if I was struggling with certain nutritional things, or if it was too hot or I was dehydrated, how I was going to work around that to navigate those issues. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think just with ultramarathon, and it's like it's being hard is guaranteed, and just trying to do everything that you can in your training and preparations to make sure that you're not suffering, and when it does get sore, just remember that's why you're there, to try and get out the other side and have that sense of achievement of overcoming it.
It's all great advice, yeah, for anyone, either someone who's improving or the first timers. But is there any particular thing you learned from your first run? Obviously, you prepare as well as you can, but would you say there's one thing you perhaps, in hindsight, you overlooked or could have done better?
On the West Highland Way specifically?
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Putting you on the spot there. Maybe everything went perfectly to plan. I don't know.
Oh, good one. I'll be honest, like I think the reason my West Highland Way went well was because it was really uneventful. Don't get me wrong, there was um sections where it was very hard, it was very hot, I was tired, maybe ran out of fluids. I tore my calf at the top of the Devil's Staircase, and I had to deal with that. That was, an unexpected thing to happen. But it was apart from that, it was fairly uneventful. It went fairly smoothly for me. Um, the I think the biggest issue I had was the midges on Lochside through the morning. Like I had to, so it was me and my friend Ewan that were running together, and I was running for a couple of like mile sections with my head down like this, trying to get my way through the midges. So they were a lot more abundant than I was expecting. That was probably the biggest thing that I overlooked, I guess.
It's a big problem more for the helping crew. And for the helping crew, the support crew is a vital element of this race, and it's become a traditional part of the event. Just briefly talk us through how you planned your support crew for the day. I mean, for instance, did you meet up with them beforehand? Do you have meetings with them and just go through everything in sort of military precision, what you wanted and where?
Yeah. So yeah, this was the biggest thing that I tried to take advantage of in the race, and I think it's one of the best things with the West Highland Way if you're looking to run a relatively quick, approximately 100-mile race. Your crew can be very, very supportive for you within the rules. So the first time that I saw my crew, for example, was coming into Balmaha. So you're allowed to have people, and unless the rules have changed this year, so you can correct me, but you're allowed to have crew meeting you a quarter mile before and being with you a quarter mile after a checkpoint. So the way I viewed that was there's no point in going into Balmaha, stopping to get refueled when I can have someone with me for that kind of half mile section. So that, just as one example, allowed me to get through quite quickly. When I got to Auchentyre, it was the kind of the same sort of deal, and Glencoe, all these sections. I've tried to have it set up so that they would meet me with the sort of nutrition that I would need, and my, all the fuel and fluids and whatever. As it started to get later on into the race, there was some changes to what was going in. So I was kind of losing interest in gels, and all I was wanting to do was drink flat Coke. And so I had to kind of say to them that, yeah, this is working a lot better for me just now. So when I get to the next point, I want 2 bottles of Coke or whatever, and less gels, so I could kind of adapt it that way. So yeah, I think if you're looking to try and run the quickest time that you can, no matter where you are in the racing field, if you're racing for the podium or you're racing to meet the cut-offs, try to take advantage of your crew as much as you can, so that when you get to a checkpoint, you can roll straight through. Or if you're going to sit down for a while, make sure that everything's ready so that you're not kind of fanning about with stuff and looking for your change your suit shoes that you're wanting, or the Coke's not flat, why is it not flat? All these wee sorts of things start to add up over the race. Yeah.
So you help and coach a few runners these days, and I don't want to preempt bad luck, but I'm sure there's a few people on the call whose training has gone really well and they're really looking forward to the next month. There's probably a few people whose training hasn't gone quite as well, and they might even be in that sort of make your mind up time. Do I really want to sort of run this race? Do I even want to think about withdrawing, or do I think about just readjusting my goals? If you had someone you were sort of coaching at the moment in that situation, what's your best advice for them?
I would say don't worry about the training, because you can't do any more training now, really. You're going to be winding that down, so there's no point trying to get anxious about that at this stage. You do have a lot of time to get yourself very organized for the race, so you can make things very efficient. You've got a lot of time to prepare what you're going to eat and drink to make sure that that all goes quite smoothly. If you've not been doing a lot of training with your nutrition, you still get some time to practice that. So in the 3 months running up to the West Highland Way, so the kind of last training block that I did, every run over 60 minutes had race day nutrition on it. So that it was just like clockwork. And that might seem excessive to a lot of people, but that just worked really, really well for me. So my body was very, very used to that. So that's the sort of thing that you could maybe adopt at this point. So you're very used to carrying your pack with all the stuff that you're going to be running with. So you're familiar with that weight, drinking so much per hour, making sure that you're getting the carbs in, your stomach's happy. That's all good stuff. If you're worried about the heat, you can do lots now in this stage of your training to get yourself prepared for the heat. So you can go to the sauna, you can use hot baths, steam rooms, these sorts of things. So these are, wee things that you can use to get the edge now. And ultimately, you're just going to have to go there on race day if you still want to do it. Maybe adjust your time goals that you're going for. And if you are maybe going to be a wee bit tight in time, then like I was saying earlier on, make sure that when you get to checkpoints, you're minimizing the amount of time that you're staying still, because no matter how fit you've got yourself, you'll probably run the later sections slower than you anticipate. So making sure that you're kind of banking time early on in the race, like through being efficient rather than kind of trying to like speed up your running. That would be my best advice at this stage. And just remember why you're doing it. Like, because like the worst case scenario is you get to Glencoe and you have to pack it in. And it's like, well, just that's just the way of it sometimes. And you can lift your head up and look around at the beautiful surroundings and shrug your shoulders, and you've just ran 72 miles or however long it is that you've done, and have another go another time. Yeah, enjoy it. Chill out.
Very good advice. Yeah. So I'm seeing several questions come into the chat room. We'll move on in a minute, but Helen, do you just want to pick out 2 or 3 questions on what Stuart's been talking about from the chat
Sure.
box?
Yeah, sure. The first one was from Graham McClyman, and you just kind of touched on it there, Stuart. He was saying over the years, drinking to thirst has always been the recommended method for me. So his question is, do the modern day athletes take more scientific approaches? Do you drink and eat so many carbs per hour, or things like, so many grams of carbs or so much fluid per hour? And you kind of alluded to that when you were saying about your race day nutrition training.
Yeah. So for like on average, like drinking to thirst is a pretty good rule to go by. If it's very, very hot and you're sweating a whole lot more, you will need to drink more fluids, and with that you'll need to take in some more electrolytes so that we hear about like the warnings of overhydration and hyponatremia, which is really, really dangerous. So you need to make sure that your hydration strategy has flexibility built into it. So if you are having to drink more because you're very, very thirsty, then you'll need to take in some more electrolytes on top of that. So that would be kind of part of what you would plan for. Equally, if for whatever reason you go out on the day, in fact, it could happen. It could be freezing cold the whole day, in the West Highland Way, and you may have to reduce how much you're drinking at certain points through the race. So yeah, you would want to kind of have that flexibility built in. As for the amount of carbs that you're burning per hour, it really depends on the individual. So I'm someone that does target amount of carbohydrates per hour. I'm very used to doing that, and I've kind of worked things out over the course of a couple of years. What works for me when I'm running quickly, what can I do when I'm going slower. So for example, in the West Highland Way, I was about 80 to 90 grams of carbs per hour, like every hour. But I was doing a race earlier in the year which had a lot more hiking, and in the hours where I was basically just hiking uphill, I could do up to 120 grams, 110, 120 grams per hour, just because the demands were slightly different. So it's down to the individual.
Yeah.
I'll give you one more then, and we're going to put the next two together really. Raymond Hubbard was asking, you'll all meet Ray at the top of the hill at Conic Hill, and possibly again at the Devil, and I think you'll hear him before you see him. But he was asking if Stuart did any training runs on the West Highland Way, and also I think it's possibly John who's put this in because it said West Highland Way. Did you do any night runs, Stuart, for practice?
Yeah. So I've ran all the sections of the West Highland Way more times than I could count. And this might seem a wee bit wild, but part of my kind of mental preparations after every single run, I could close my eyes and I could visualize pretty much every single section of the race, because I'd done them all kind of like through the day, to the point where I knew where all the turns were, and it was almost like a VR, kind of like that. And I would go out on like training runs, like in my taper, and I would say, right, on this run, all I'm going to think about is this section of the race, and I would focus on that. I did some sections, I did the first section at night as a training run, just to get used to wearing a head torch, because I hate wearing a head torch. But that was about it. And that did come in handy because, the course does look quite different when it's dark, and you can take a lot of wrong turns, particularly when you come out of drumming. So yeah, it's handy to do that.
Okay, thanks a lot for now, Stuart. We'll bring you in later when we have our general question and answer. So I want to bring Ian in now. Ian's got some housekeeping notes about the race, which he wants to impart to everybody. Yes.
Thanks, Adrian. I just wanted to say a few things. We've sent out all the instructions, so please share them far and wide. They've been emailed to all of the runners. If you could share them with your support crews and anybody who's going to be around in the day, because there's quite a lot in there, and it's really important everybody follows what they need to be doing. One of the issues we've had every year, we've had problems somewhere, and we tend to have problems with the support crew. It's not really problems with the runners per se. And last year's biggest problems were around Tyndrum, where we had been blunt with too many support crews who were parking up in business premises, either at the Green Welly or at the Real Food Cafe or whatever, and we're just kind of setting up camp there. And that gets frustrating for the business owners, which I fully understand. This year we've been able to get access to the disused hotel in Tyneside when you come in, and in the left hand side the Muthu Royal. And again, this is all in the instructions, so people are able to go into there and park. We think there's about 70 or 80 places probably in there, so that should give us quite a bit more capacity and should keep us away from sort of irritating local businesses. So please, if everybody could do that, then it would make a big difference. I mean, by all accounts, go into places like Real Food Cafe, they're helping us out. They're giving us a deal for all runners on the Sunday and the Monday, which is great. If you're passing, get in to eat, brilliant. That's fine. But it's just the sort of being a good neighbour. Don't go in and don't go in and hang about if you're not buying anything. A couple of things we're changing this year, just small changes. I mean, you'll be well looked after at registration. When you turn up, you'll be showing your way around, what you have to collect, what you have to do with things. So don't worry about that. Shouldn't be any chance of getting anything wrong there at all. This year we're going to ask all the runners to wear numbers. The numbers we'll be giving won't be the typical numbers that you pin on your vest, because we recognise that that's a bit of a hassle if you change top and all the rest. It will be a sort of sticky number that will hope you're able to attach to your race vest to the sleeve. And what that does is it lets us see who the runner is when we're out in the course. We can instantly pick that up. There'll be a luminous yellow. They're actually sitting in a big back box just behind me, and I've arrived. So you'll get that number there. And if you can keep that visible at all times, it shouldn't be intrusive at all to do it. If you haven't submitted your support crew details yet, the deadline's tonight, so please try and get that in. The more I get in, the fewer people I have to chase. If you've sent it in, then we'll have received it. Don't worry about that. I've not been responding to acknowledge all of them, but if by any chance I haven't received them, I'll be back in touch with you and to get that. So, and just following up on what Stuart said, I think enjoy the last few weeks. It's I always thought it's quite useful to see we're all doing this because we want to. Nobody's been forced to do it, so it's a chance to try and enjoy it, do something wonderful, spend a great weekend with great people. A weekend, I think it's certainly my favourite weekend in the calendar, and I say that including all the UK athletics stuff I do. So it's the best to be involved in that. So enjoy and best of luck for the last few weeks.
Thanks so much, Ian. Yeah, I think I always say that the West Highland Way, whether you're helping, whether you're running it, whatever you're doing, whether you're involved, it's just a great way to experience Scotland in midsummer. Yeah. Okay, so we're now going on to our living legend, that is Lucy Cahoon. Hi, Lucy.
Hello.
Hello. We'll come on to your running in a minute, but before I forget, I want you to tell everybody about your wonderful operation you have now going called Shoe Share.
Yeah. Are you happy for me?
Your old shoes to the race, but she's going to explain what Shoe Share is and how you can help by bringing old shoes to the race.
Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen for a couple of slides. Oh, the host, I think you need to enable screen sharing if that's okay. Hold on. Yeah, so sorry, I'll just do from presentation mode. Yeah, so Shoe Share is a charity scheme that I set up just over a year ago now. And the reason behind it is a running friend of mine who has long-standing links to Malawi, told me about their Sports Academy program. So just to give you a real whistle-stop tour, you may or may not know that Malawi is one of the poorest countries in the world. The average wage is less than $2 a day. They have real challenges with sanitation, very, very limited transport, especially in rural areas, and often no electricity for large parts of the day, which makes it interesting when we're having our calls and WhatsApp things with the team over there. So there's an organization called Tafika. It's a community-based organization in the north of Malawi, which supports over 200 villages. And the idea is that they will be entirely self-sustaining. So it's very much a sort of collaboration, empowering people to make their own livelihoods, to improve education, improve healthcare, and employment as well. And the way that sport fits into this is that the director of the Topeka organization is himself an ex-athlete, track athlete. He's an amazing man, and he's just got a real kind of zest for life. He set up this academy to try and develop young kids into becoming better sports people. So they work with children of all ages, but predominantly over 14s. They work in netball, basketball, athletics, football, and those are the main sports. And they develop their kids right through from playing outside the school to taking them across Malawi to matches. They've achieved like amazing results. They've been like regional champions. They've sent a couple of athletes to represent Malawi at national level. And this is from an area where people have next to nothing. The photo here shows one of the netball teams kitted out in matching kit and shoes, which have come from Scotland. Traditionally, they are often playing either in bare feet or in old flip-flops, sandals, anything they can get their feet on. And as well as risking injury and impeding performance, it's just a bit rubbish. You know, in terms of self-esteem, when you turn up to play other teams and you can't even get a pair of shoes to wear. So what we do is what we do is send the shoes over, and as well as them going to athletes, they also are used as currency. So this is a bit that you might not think about when you donate, if you choose to donate your shoes. They are also currency in the local community. So this chap is a man called Major, and one of the ways to generate money for the community is to build a forest, which they're then going to sell the wood and generate an income for the community. Because this is really valuable, unless somebody watches the little seedlings overnight, they'll get stolen. So Major's job is to stay awake during the night to make sure the saplings don't get stolen. In return for that, he gets a pair of shoes. So everybody who volunteers in the community gets a pair of trainers, and the athletes get the trainers in response for helping. So then they help grow the crops that feed the school. So beyond just a pair of shoes that will go to somebody who's playing netball, it actually helps this whole ecosystem. So just lastly, in terms of what we're looking for at the West Highland Way, Ian and John and all the organisers have very kindly allowed me to set up a van, which will be in the car park area. And the shoes we're looking for, any kind of running shoes, road, trail, fell, whatever. Football boots, if you happen to have any of those. Predominantly sort of size 4 and up, men's and women's. And good quality. You know, we're not looking for kind of landfill. We don't want to just pass a problem over to Malawi. So if you think somebody would be pleased to have these, then that's your good rule of thumb. It'd be really helpful if you could tie the shoes together so they don't get lost. And then if you'd like to, it would be really lovely if you want to add a note. We've had some really nice things like, oh, you know, from Jane, hope you enjoy these shoes as much as I do, etc. So that would be really fantastic. So far, we've sent over 1,300 pairs. And it's just growing and growing, so it's really fantastic to partner with West Highland Way, and that's the sales pitch over.
I think that's a pretty good sales pitch, Lucy. Thank you very much. And I was astounded at the response that runners at the Highland Fling gave, and it wasn't just individual runners. There was one guy came all the way from Ireland by car, and I think Lucy christened him Beard Man. He had this wonderful beard, which more or less went down halfway down his chest. But he sold the idea to his local running club, and he actually arrived with about 50 pairs of shoes in the back.
78.
That he, sorry?
78.
78 that he brought all the way from Ireland. So wherever you're coming from, if you can just spread the word around your local club, your local running group, let's just see how many shoes we can get brought to Mulgai. And if they can't get to Mulgai, get them to Fort William. We'll get them to Lucy somehow. Yeah. But
Somebody will be at the end. Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay, thanks for that. It's a really great initiative, and it's good to see the whole community thing that's growing there. Okay, on to your running, Lucy. I'm looking at a little figure here that says 17 hours, 16 minutes and 20 seconds. Which, for those that don't know, is the women's West Highland Way record that Lucy ran in 2007. Dare I say, that was 17 years ago, Lucy. And it's
I was only 12.
Still waiting for someone to break it. For those that don't know Lucy's background, she was one of Britain's, I'm going to embarrass her, she literally was one of Britain's top athletes. She was the best Pascal, Elsie Davis of her era, basically. She's still only one of 2 British women, to my knowledge, that have won CCC as well, amongst other things. So up there with the best. You almost gave up on being a triathlete and got seriously into trail running, and you'd won the Fling that year. But then the West Highland Way, when did that come on your radar? It wasn't like nowadays everyone plans almost years ahead and goes through all the ballot. You more or less made a decision after the Fling that you wanted to run the West Highland Way, I think.
I was coerced in May, I think it was, yeah.
And what's the furthest you'd run? You obviously run several races as well, but what was the longest run you'd done before the Highland Way?
The Fling. The
Fling. So you're practically, yeah, doubling in distance almost. So in terms of translation, I don't want to say you were just winging it and looking for a personal challenge. Did you have any idea what you were letting yourself in for? Was it just something that you were coerced into doing in an off-guarded moment?
I didn't really know, but I don't think anybody really knows. Like you say, very few people will go and do a 100-mile training run. So there's always the last section, which is an unknown. And I think that's the same in marathon training. You know, people say leave the last few miles or the last section sort of unknown. I didn't know, but I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. And yeah, like Stuart said, I think you can get to Tyndrum. I think when you do half of it, you think, how could I possibly do double this? But then in the moment, it's the classic thing about you only can focus on the next part, and it's just each section by section. So no, I think it was unknown, but sometimes ignorance is bliss in a way, because there was nothing to worry about. And I would say to everybody who's doing it for the first time, I think that's the beauty of it, because you're not judging yourself against, you know, it's just against you. And you might have times in mind or whatever, but really just it's a personal challenge to see how far you can get. And yeah, I think that's the unknown is sometimes part of the joy of it, really.
Yeah. We alluded talking to Stuart that yes, you've illustrated it very well with what you just said, that yes, you've got to be fit. I mean, you don't just sort of wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to run the West Highland Way. It does come with a bit of accumulation of training. But it's also what's between the ears. And I know you're a very well motivated person anyway, but that particular year, for those that don't know the story, you actually finished second overall in the race to Adrian Davis, a very good friend of both of ours. And at one point, you were actually leading the race ahead of Adrian. Just for a bit of West Highland Way history, just talk us through how a lady could have won the West Highland Way outright.
And
how did Adrian beat you in the end? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I don't know how he beat me in the end. I guess he was just a lot faster than me at the end. I didn't know I was in the lead. I think at Tyndrum, my support crew told me, so I hadn't realised that. I mean, obviously, context as well. There were probably a lot fewer people, so it's maybe not quite as kind of a well-attended event as it used to be. Yeah, but the person who won, we knew each other quite well, so there was a little bit of toing and froing at checkpoints and things. Yeah, I don't know how to answer your question really.
Okay, that's fine. No, your record on the day, is obviously a lot of people looked at that time and thought, is it beatable? And of course it is, but were you at the max that day? Do you think you could have run any faster, or did you pull everything out on the day?
Well, there's kind of various bits of that. I got a tiny bit lost in the last 20 minutes. So yeah, I could, if I hadn't got lost, I mean, it was like 5 minutes or something, but a bit annoying. So follow the markers. But also I ran better in subsequent years. So, but I think for where I was, for the training I'd done, yes, I couldn't have done more. And that is evidenced by quite how ill I was afterwards. So I ended up in a wheelchair. I was in hospital. I was violently sick. I couldn't walk for 3 days. So I'm not suggesting that as a strategy, because it didn't wasn't that comfortable. But yeah, I think that's testament to the fact I didn't kind of leave anything out there.
And Stuart's talked a little bit about how he plans his nutrition pretty meticulously. How were you with nutrition back then? Were you, how well planned?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not someone that sort of measures things and does like carbs per hour or whatever. I just think that my body will tell me what I need. I probably made a few mistakes, but actually I kind of erred on the side of caution, which was essentially buying Tesco's. So I had every possible food group in the back of the car, and just prepare for really strange cravings that you don't anticipate, I would say. And whatever your support crew offers is probably wrong. So, yeah. So I did find, I kind of dug out some old race stories, and this became a theme from subsequent races. And Stuart's alluded to it as well, but salt, anything salty. I mean, some people go salt tablets, but yeah, because gels and sweet stuff and Haribo and all the rest of it, there's only so much you can take before your stomach just rejects it. So personal favorites, roast potatoes, really amazing. Stock cubes, real food like soup or lasagna. You know, you might want something that's a substantial real food. Black tea, fresh fruit, something really kind of refreshing, and sparkling water. So those are my kind of things that, yeah, my cravings, I would say. But I didn't tend to eat loads, but I think your body kind of vaguely tells you.
And Stuart also alluded to this about being organized at checkpoints, so you minimize time there. Did you actually stop at any checkpoints, or were you on the move pretty much the whole way?
I tried to be on the move as far as possible, and my support crew were good in that they were very, what's the word, kind of tough love. You know, don't sit down unless you absolutely have to, don't get comfortable. The only time I had a significant stop, which was probably, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes, which was quite chunky, was at the ski station, Carmel Cottage. And that's when I needed real food. So I think I had some soup and a cup of tea, because I was really flaking at that point. And once I'd had that, that carried me for the rest of the way. But yeah, don't lull into, oh, I'll just stop and I'll just do this and I'll just do that. Yeah, just keep going.
And I believe you dug out some of your training diaries.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was only, I happened to come across, I had to dig them out, but it was just to see the date now and what I did in the last 4 weeks. And it may or may not be of any use. So I'm not setting it up as a sort of,
saying don't try this at home, people, but Lucy's going to
share. I mean, this is just FYI if it's of any use. I'll just do a screen share thing, but feel free to ignore. Just try and go back. If I can do this. Yeah, here we go. I hope you can see that okay. So yeah, week beginning 28th of May, which is pretty much what we're on now. So I was quite lazy, had a rest day on Monday, which you usually do after the weekend. goodness knows what I was doing on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then Thursday I did 2 1-hour runs. It's like one might be steady and one would be kind of gentle. Same thing on Friday. Saturday I did a long run. And Sunday I did a long run because those were usually my like back-to-back weekend days. And then over the following weeks, I did a couple of longer runs, like 2.5 hours. I still did lots of intervals. I did a wee hill race, like a 6-mile hill race. I actually did a mountain marathon. Anyway, and then I did track sessions. And then in race week, and again, standard, just like super easy, half an hour, 35 minutes, taper. But then to your point about this wasn't out of nowhere, by way of background, I had done a lot of fast running, fast road stuff. Earlier that year, I did like, I can't remember, but it was 2 something or other, like sub 3-hour marathon, sub 8-minute half. So speed. And I think that was the thing that misses years ago, but people thought in order to run long distances, you just run long and slow lots of times, which couldn't be further from the truth. And the people, I mean, goodness knows how Stuart is as speedy as he is, but you know, that is track sessions, that's hill sessions, that's really painful reps, and that's what makes you faster, I think.
And did you incorporate any, would you advise anyone incorporating any of that speed work into the next month if they haven't done much up to now?
If you haven't done much, no, probably not, because you're probably going to go and pull something painful. So no, I wouldn't just suddenly start going to do reps. But yeah, just like tempo runs and stuff. I would vary the pace if you can, I think.
And do you have a standout moment from that year where everything was just, you just felt like you were in the flow and everything just clicking, and you just knew you made, yeah, this is a distance I can manage, and I'm going to crack this?
I mean, various bits felt like that because it was the first time, and because I had no expectations. I don't even think I might have worn a watch, but I never looked at my watch. So I was just letting myself sort of experience the landscape and the people and the atmosphere, which was fantastic. And I think that probably the last half hour where it's downhill, and don't let that fool you into thinking it's fun, because it's really sore. But at least it's downhill, and then you know, and then you've got the massive adrenaline, and yeah, just that sense of utter kind of exhilaration, and the atmosphere at the end. Yeah, and it makes it all worthwhile.
That's great. So it looks like there's plenty more questions coming into the chat box. So I'm going to open it up now just for general question and answers. Helen can just pick out what people have been wanting to know. Okay,
Adrian, there's a couple, but before we go there, can I just ask Ian? Ian, you mentioned the change at Tyndrum with the car parking, and we're going to have a crew there, a marshal crew. But can you just put into words the change that you've got? I know it's in the runner's brief, but what it actually means for the runners on the course at that point? Because there's a wee change there this year as well.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that when I was talking earlier. As you approach Tyndrum, you run along the river on the right hand side, and you pass the first caravan park. Instead of, when you get to the road, taking the left towards the station, past the what do you call it? By the way, the runners this year will go right along that road and up towards the main A82. That'll pass the hotel where all the cars are parked. And then we want the runners to go along the pavement to the traffic lights and cross at the Pelican Crossing there and get onto the same side of the road as the Green Welly, and then sort of head in front of the Green Welly and rejoin the route. Distance-wise, it's pretty much identical, but we just think it's safer. We had problems at the past, people crossing the road at Brodie's from the main route. It's a busy road, difficult getting people across, so we think that'll be better, and it'll also bring you closer to your support crews as well. Helen, if I can maybe just say, there's been a few questions about was the route marked. It's the West Highland Way Trail. It's really a very well marked trail with the official trail signs, and I think I've outlined in the race instructions there's 5 different sections, small detours from that main section, but they'll all be closely marked. one of them being in Tyndrum, one up to the Glencoe checkpoint, one when you come into Kinlochleven, and then the bit at the end along the sort of track right past the Braveheart car park. But these will all be marked, so there's no need to worry. And everywhere else, you just follow the West Highland Way signs, and it's you'll be fine with that.
Thanks, Ian. The other question somebody was asking, you have answered it, but we'll just reiterate it in case everybody's not seen it, was about Kinlochleven and about whether your crew should meet you there or not. Now, there are mandatory meeting points where your crew has to meet you, in the same way there are places where they're not allowed to meet you, and Kinlochleven is one. Now, yes, there's a crew there who will dish out tough love under Julie's guidance. They'll also have some medical aid there as well. There's also facilities where you can boil a kettle to heat up your pot noodle, and I believe this year the chippy's staying open till 11 o'clock at night. So your crew certainly will benefit, even if you don't. And again, like that, please support them, because that's a lot of effort that they're putting in to be there. But no, as Ian said, and I think John also answered it, that you have to be met there.
And that's as much importance of, I mean, if you're in a poor state and there's something not right, and for example, the medical team say you can't go on, we need the crew there to be able to
That's right.
take you away and extract you. Hopefully that won't be the case, but yeah, the compulsory checkpoints are exactly as it says, and people need to meet their runner there.
Okay, I think that's pretty much covered what's in the box.
There was
Lynn had
one-
asked, and I think, sorry, I was going to say
Sorry.
Lynn had asked Lucy, but Lucy had actually mentioned it in the conversation. Yeah, there'll be somebody there to pick up shoes at the end, Lynn.
There was one specific question about NSAIDs, and the general response to NSAIDs, which I think it was Greg who asked the question, recognises that, you know, they're bad for you doing ultras. You don't want to be taking ibuprofen or those sorts of things, that they do really nasty things to you. The specific question was about, is it okay to use Voltaren gels and that sort of thing, because they're not systemic? I don't think any of us have got the specific knowledge to answer that degree of nuance. What we will do is take that question and pass it on to Sean and get him to post an update on the Facebook page about that one. But in general terms, NSAIDs are bad. Avoid them. And if you need to rub yourself with something, go old school.
Tiger Balm.
Tiger Balm, deep heat, you name it. Something hot and smelly. But we will get an answer posted to that on the Facebook page.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to go on, Adrian?
Yes, was there any other questions there? That's okay.
I don't think so. I think we've pretty much covered those. There was a question about the route, but Ian's covered that with the changes. And Alistair had asked about a GPX, but as Ian says, follow the signs. Don't worry too much about your GPX. Just follow the signs. That's well marked. And if there's any dubiety, we'll have people in high vis shouting at you that you're going the wrong way.
Helen, if I could just add that we will have trackers. All the runners will have trackers.
Yeah.
Maybe harder for the runners to pick up, but that tracker does have the entire route apart from the new Tyndrum diversion. So it's got the rest of the areas on it. But I appreciate that it's sometimes quite difficult for the runners to use that.
Use the tracker,
yeah.
Great for the crew though, and it's great for us to find out where people are. So well done.
Yes.
Okay.
I have another question for both Stuart and Lucy, actually. Yeah, we've gone through nutrition a little bit. Quite often, as Lucy had pertained to, there's only so many Haribos and gels you can have. Do you sort of agree? Did you agree with your crew beforehand just to keep giving you choices at a particular point, so there's always something that was going to work, or do you just sort of wait till you got to a checkpoint and say, I want this, I want that, or have you thought in advance with your crew to have choices there ready for you? First, maybe.
I mean, I had everything. I had lots of choices, sweet and savory and everything. So usually one of my runners would run towards me and say, what do you want? And then they would shout back, and then you've got like 30 seconds, a minute to hand you the right thing. So yeah, choices. I know people have a plan that they're going to have like mashed potato, mashed potato, mashed potato. but you might just change. You know, you just never quite know. So don't limit yourself. Definitely have choice, I would say.
Stuart, do you have a similar sort of strategy?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm a bit odd in the respect that no matter how long the race seems to be, I don't really have an appetite the whole time, so I just drink and eat gels. Like in the West Highland Way, I had a couple of ice lollies. That was the only real solids that I had through the race. But one of the things that my crew did do was when they saw me after Auchentyre Farm, they were asking if I wanted anything from the shop. So I had that wee stretch between Auchentyre and Brodie's, and then like until I got to, you know, the Bridge of Orchay and up to Glencoe, where if there was anything that I fancied, it was just going to be like 10-15k until I could get it. So if that's something that would work for you, it's something to take advantage of. Yeah, and you can also, if you got reception, you can send a voice note to your crew to tell them to get you a bag of chips or whatever.
I remember going back, this is showing my age with the race. I was horrified the first time I saw someone pull a mobile phone out of their pack and phone ahead to their crew to get something ready for them. But hey, life changes and we move on. Yeah. I've just noticed Isabel Duna has put a message in the chat box. It's about heat training, Stuart. You alluded to heat training and saunas. Should you be doing that straight after a run, or does it matter when you have your sauna? Discuss, please.
So anytime that you're going to be able to do it, it's going to be better than not doing it. The kind of protocols that I've used, you would get yourself warmed up for about 20 minutes to half an hour. So when I'm doing it, I'll jog to the sauna and then sit in the sauna for 20 minutes to half an hour and build that up over about 7 to 10 days. But you need to remember that when you're adding in heat stress, you need to take away some training stress. So it's a good time to do it during your taper because your volume should be coming down. But you wouldn't want to be pairing that with a very intense interval session. So like Lucy was saying, in the last few weeks, if you have been doing some speed work, you'll likely want to keep that in some capacity to keep your legs ticking over. But I wouldn't suggest going to the track and hammering out some intervals, puking, and then going into the sauna. So you maybe want to allow yourself to relax a wee bit and then go in afterwards. But yeah, you want to get your core temperature up and then go and sit in a sauna, or if it's a hot bath, do that for a bit longer.
That echoes what several of the squad did who went out to Thailand for the World Trail Championships a couple of years ago. They would do a training session and then sort of hopefully be in position to get into sauna immediately afterwards to have the benefit there when their body was warm, certainly, and got warmer. Yeah. Thanks, Stuart. That's great. Lucy, did you ever do any sauna training for your hot races?
No, I possibly should have. No, I didn't. Richie Cunningham back in the day, and he used to put his exercise bike next to the oven and leave the oven door open. So that was old school retro, but no, I didn't do that.
No, didn't do any harm. Yeah. Okay, we're whittling through the questions. I can't see any more coming in, so I think everyone has obviously got their own plan ready for John. Yeah,
a couple more, Adrian. Mike asked the question. Mike Rathman asked the question of Lucy. It's been a couple of years since Lucy set the record. She's tempted to do the race again, maybe at a slower pace. And Lucy hasn't shut the door on that. She's replied saying she's not sure. It's not a no, but there have to be lots of puppies at the finish. So there we are. If we want Lucy to have another go, it's puppies at the finish. And there was also, Ian, maybe if you could just run over again the information that you're expecting people to fill in on the support crew forms. A couple of questions about that. In terms of exactly what details you need. I mean, it should all be self-explanatory in the form, but somebody was asking, do you need to have put your support crew, your support runner information in separately, or is it just the two support crew details that you want on the form?
Yeah, if you just fill out the form in the boxes that are there, so effectively I think it's you could correct me, John, but I think it's just we want to know your two support people who are there, and then there's an extra field where you can put additional details if possible. What we need that for is that if something happens to you, we want to have the details to know who to get in touch with. So if you just basically follow the form and put the details in. If you've only got two support people, that's absolutely fine. Just put their details in there. If you've got other people coming in and out, then add them in the sort of extra field if you could.
One other thing on crewing, if you are a runner and you're running into difficulties with your support crew, if somebody's dropped out or whatever, then get in touch with us and let us see if we can help you. We have had instances in the past of people trying to be a little bit cute and run it with less support than they require, and that just leads to difficulties and can eventually lead to you being stopped. So please don't do that. We'll try and help you if you're stuck, but please don't try and be cute about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would just emphasise that the rules are really clear. You need one person up to octa tire, and you need two afterwards, and that goes for everybody. There's no exceptions to that. So, as John said, if you've got a problem, then please let the team know, and we'll see if we can help. But you won't be allowed to start or continue the race if you don't have that in place.
And on that, Ian, somebody has said, can you change the names of your support crew after submitting the form? And I think the answer to that is we all know that life gets in the way. And before I saw that one, I was actually going to plea, just remember, if somebody gets a new phone or changes the telephone number, please let us know.
Yeah, what I would ask, Helen,
all sorts of bother.
The easiest way for us to process that, if your information changes, please just submit another form.
Another form, yeah.
And just submit it online, and we'll just then delete the earlier forms and just keep the latest ones. So please do that.
There's nothing worse than us trying to get through to somebody on the phone and we're getting this number is not available anymore or something like that. It just adds to the stress for everybody. So.
This is, I mean, I don't want to underestimate it. This is an important part of our whole race safety plan, that we've got contact details for everybody running, and we know who to get in touch with if there are any problems. So yeah, if you need to update that, please do so.
While we're being given the information on this, can we also just clarify what happens around compulsory kit or mandatory kit? You don't need to carry it with you at all times, but you absolutely need to have it available to you. If we call bad weather at any point, then you must have access to it. And something that came up last year, if mandatory kit applies to your support runners as well. There's no point you running over the Rannoch Moor in full waterproofs, and your poor support runner is in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt getting blown to bits and frozen to the skin. They're just as much a risk to themselves and to you. So please, mandatory kit's really important. Even on a sunny day, have it. If you don't use it, that's great, but you must have it with you. Yeah,
we had that last year at Ultra Tire. We had to say to people, the sun was still splitting the skies, but the weather forecast was awful. So we had to ask them to start carrying it from there on. And by the time they got to Bridge of Orchy, or certainly by the time they got to Glencoe, everybody had it on. So, make sure that everybody has it.
Somebody just asked a question there that came up about having a support run, and could you have more than one? I mean, again, I think this is outlined in the race instructions. If you're running at quicker than 21-hour pace at each of the checkpoints, you're not allowed a support runner at all, full stop. If you're slower than that, we're pretty relaxed about how many support runners you have. You can have more than one if you want. You can have as many as you like. Actually, from our perspective, having a few people out with a runner when they're going through the dark over some of the more remote areas is a good thing. So we encourage that, but as long as they are running at slower than 21-hour pace for that. So the answer is yes, you can have, if you're slower than 21-hour pace and you're allowed support runner, you can have as many as you want.
Adrian, we've got another good question here from Kyle Wilson. It was, how was both Lucy and Stuart's recovery after the West Highland Way? Any advice on speeding up the process? Also, with the race starting at 1 AM, what do you advise doing on race day? Try and sleep most of the day?
Stuart, we'll have you first on that.
Well, yeah, the recovery, you just need to take it as it comes. And the the biggest thing that I've learned from ultras is that you'll feel good before you are good. You'll maybe find in a couple of days' time your DOMs have settled down, and you might want to get back out there, but you can end up digging yourself a pretty big hole afterwards. So I would say the best advice, particularly for the first week after the race, is to make sure that you've got lots of fun, relaxing things to do that's going to occupy your time, and preferably stuff that doesn't involve walking about in your feet a whole lot. But the next weekend after the race, like if you're back at work that week, plan to like do stuff with your friends and family that involves sitting on your backside eating mostly, getting lots of good sleep, making sure that you're well hydrated, and be accepting that you're putting yourself through the physiological equivalent of a car crash when you do one of these events. Your body is so screwed up afterwards, and just the muscle aches leaving or the night sweats leaving, that doesn't mean that you're recovered afterwards. So make sure that you take the pressure off yourself and you're not trying to get back out there to get the Strava graph going again. That's a difficult situation to put yourself in. As for race day, sleeping, I stayed up quite late the night before, so I stayed up till about 2 o'clock and then slept in. And because it's quite bright, I would suggest that you have some like an eye mask and some earplugs so that you can sleep through a wee bit later into the day, and then get up and go about your day fairly normally. Make sure that you're eating, staying hydrated, and then if you can get a nap, great. If you can't, don't worry about it. It's just one night's sleep. Just get up to the eyeballs in caffeine and get down to Mulgai and get going. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Lucy?
Yeah, I would echo that. And it is quite funny because I do have the evidence. I've just like flicked through my little book of notes. So 2 days after the Westline, well, like 3 days after the Westline away, I said around 20 minutes easy. The coach said it'll take 3 months to recover fully. So there you go. Person said you've had a coach, and a month later, I tried to do a hill race, and I thought I was fine, and it was really sore. So yeah, I did lots of gentle stuff like swimming. If you do swim, I just can't recommend it highly enough because it's just fantastic. All over, kind of obviously no impact, really nice gentle recovery, and crisps obviously. And then on the day, yeah, just everything Stuart said. You might not sleep well the night before because the nerves, but I think if you've banked enough sleep in the week running up to it, you're fine. And yeah, just gentle, just try and rest. And yeah, that's kind of, you're good to go by then. So yeah, don't overthink it.
Adrian, could I just say, people laugh at the 3 months, and I've always kind of gone by that as well, because there's a general rule that you need a day per mile after a hard race, and that does equate to about 3 months for the West Highland Way. And I'm not saying for a minute you can't run in that period or all the rest, but I think it's saying when will you be back to fully recovered, and it can take that length of time. So if you do still feel a bit lethargic for a couple of months, don't worry about it. It's just the body's healing process.
Great. Listening to all of that, I've just got 4 little tips here to pass on myself. Number 1, you all know the race starts at 1 o'clock in the morning. How many of you have actually been out running at 1 o'clock in the morning? Don't need to answer that. I'm just leaving that one out there for you to sort of ponder that. And how you're going to cope with is your body used to running at 1 o'clock in the morning, or 3 o'clock in the morning, or even 4 o'clock in the morning? Just ponder that one. In terms of recovery, people talk about mile 27 recovery drink or recovery meal after a marathon. After the Westline away, that probably goes on for about a week. So for about a week, just keep shoveling in the protein and just shoveling in all the fluids, and that will hasten the recovery, but it's still going to take a long time. And going back to a couple of things that we talked about with the rules, you had a bit of insight into what goes on in like the back office of the race when the race is happening. And the hardest thing for any race organizer, whether that's the Highland Way, whether that's the Spine, whether that's the Arc of Attrition, is where is everybody at any one point in time? The organizers need to know that, to have a pretty good idea where everybody is. We have a duty of care to make sure we know where everybody is. So it is important that we have these contact details. It's not just a little rule Ian's made up, as we do need to get in touch with people at times. And John mentioned about support crews being well kitted out as well. I'll put a link in the Facebook site. The guys at Glenmore Lodge, the trail runners there, did an excellent video of how hypothermia can come on very quickly, even in summer. It's just a short little 5-minute video, but it's just, I'll say no more, but I'll watch out for a link I'll put in the Facebook site in the next 24 hours so you can watch that video. It's worth its weight in gold and worth 5 minutes. That could save you or anybody else a lot of grief. And on that note, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in and staying with us. We are having another evening, Monday, June the 10th. Keep that date in mind. That will be more specific for the race itself and planning. And I'm happy to announce, exclusively reveal, we are going to have another West Highland legend, the one and only Paul Giblin, talking on that event. So do put that in your diary. We'll put the details of that up on the Facebook site in the next couple of days as well. And I just want to wish you all well for the next month. Train hard and relax hard in equal measure. And we'll see you all at Mulgai on one certain Friday night soon. Okay, everybody, thank you so much. It'll be online as soon as John can get it together. Thanks to John and Helen and Ian for creating everything. And big thank you to Lucy and Stuart for their input as well. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Oh, lots of little hands and hearts flirting across, making my heart go all aflutter. Thank you.
Oh,